Let's first address the AI voice. I have a god-awful Minnesota accent, and my computer I'm working on is right by a major avenue. If I were to narrate it, you'd have the worst Fargo accent followed by snowplows and sirens. With that out of the way, recently on the Fallout 4 subreddit, a discussion came up about logic gates, and I offered to put something together. I'm sure there will be someone who will come along and, well, actually me for some of this. I'm not an expert at this. This is just stuff I've noticed along the way. In most instances, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And just because you see something on this example doesn't mean it's how you might do it in a real Commonwealth example. One thing I mean by that is in this video, you might see two power generators or logic gates out in the open, but often what I do is hide one under a subfloor or in a false ceiling. All this is doing is showing you how this stuff seems to work. So with that out of the way, let's begin. First, let's go to the Build menu. And transmits power if all inputs have power. So you can have one power unit or 100, but they all need to be on. NAND, not a delicious Indian bread, these will transmit if you have at least one power unit off. NOR. Now we're stepping out of the realm of easy to grasp to WTF. How do they transmit power if they're not getting power? That doesn't make any sense. This is why you'll see a secondary gate below. Not same with NOR, it transmits if its inputs are off. But that doesn't make any sense, right? Again, this is why we'll use another gate. OR. At least we're back to the realm of logical for a minute. As long as any power unit is on, it'll transmit. Again, you can have 1 or 100, but you just need at least one. XNOR. This is a hybrid that seems to make sense. Then all of a sudden we're back to WTF. If you have one or more power units directly connected, if they're all on, power will flow. But it also will send power if all your power units are off. Again, this is why we'll use another gate. XOR will transmit power if it has exactly one power unit on. I have my Mercer Safehouse set up with a light-based warning system, and this is exactly what I do. My power unit sends power up to the ceiling lights, but sends a signal down to my warning lights. We'll see an example here in a little bit. In case you're wondering about my generators, here you go. They're from the SOE pack. If you have Automatron and you still have robots roaming the wastelands, do not sell the military-grade circuit boards. These generators use them, and they're awesome. I legit do not use anything other than these. Let's first address how you know your power is going. Pay attention to three things. The amber light on top left the red tube, which is your input, and its green ring, the black tube, which is your output, and its green ring. These are, more or less, going to tell you exactly if your gate is getting and sending power. Why am I disclaiming this isn't always the case. You'll see. AND gate. As you can see, I have two power units, and both are on, which we can tell by their red dots. They are both inputting to the red tube, which has turned on the amber light and the green ring. They're outputting power as evidenced by the green ring on the black tube, and we can confirm this because the light bulb above is on. You can have one power unit or 100, but they all need to be on for it to flow. NAND here we have one power unit on and one off. We have power flowing to the bulb. Awesome. And once we turn a second on, the light goes off. NOR and NOT. How does something transmit power if it's not getting power? This is why you see 3 power units and an extra gate. The unit that's on is sending power up to the purple bulb. When I try turning on both units that are connected to the gate, nothing happens to the white bulb. And here we see if I turn on the top power unit, the gate will have its red tube turn on its green ring, but nothing happens. So what happens if we use an intermediary gate? Here I connect the purple light's power unit to another logic gate, and I have tested this out with a few different kinds of gates as the intermediary, and they've worked. So don't think you have to do this exactly. Not when we connect the intermediary gate to the primary one. We see the light. But do you notice? The amber light for the intermediary is on, the red tube green ring is on, but the black tube green ring is off. And when we look at the primary, the amber light is on, the red tube green ring is off, and the black tube green ring is on. From what I can tell, the NOR and NOTS don't see the intermediary as a power unit. That's why the primaries then kick on. And you'll notice that the intermediary I'm using is another NOR, which, again, makes no real sense at face value. But if you look at them like one whole, then it starts to make some sense. Let's go back to easy for a minute with an OR gate. All you need is a minimum of one. That's it. In the words of Hannibal Lecter, simplicity. XNOR. This is the hybrid one I mentioned. For XNOR, you have if all power units are the same, whether they're on or off, they transmit. On, easy. 1 or 100, as long as they're the same, you're set. Off. This is where we need to use a bypass again. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why use an intermediary? Why not just go OR black to XNOR red? Let's try it. Because that's why. For some reason that someone smarter than me can explain, it doesn't like that direct of a connection. You need to use the intermediary if you want to have it work in the all-off configuration. Don't get mad at me. Get mad at Todd Howard. XOR. This requires exactly one to be powered. This is the main one I use in a lot of my setups. The main two uses for them are overhead garage doors and warning lights for Mercer Safehouse. But as long as I have exactly one on, power flows. Now let's look at an example of an XOR at work. I have two bulbs, a red one that's off and a white one that's on. Red and white feed to the gate. The gate feeds to a switch. The switch powers on the white light. What happens if I need to let the synths, fugitives in my hide room know to shut the hell up and not make a sound and not make it obvious to the hunters? This is exactly how I do it. So let's throw the switch for the red light. Not only does turning red's power unit on turn the red light on and turn off the white light, but if the people in the hide room try turning on the switch, it won't work until they get the all clear. Let me first say that this isn't a 100% recreation of my Mercer setup. This basically covers the lighting only for the hide room. When you're on the main floor, for example, turning on the light switch sends a signal up to turn the ceiling lights on, and it sends a signal down to turn the red lights on and override the white light in the safe room. Now you might say about my having two power units right next to each other, but again, I use subfloors and false ceilings, so I hide the white light one under the subfloor, and it is always on. Turning on the lights on the main floor then sends a signal down to the subfloor for the reds to override the white. Now let's look at garage doors. Again, I'm using an XOR. And yes, I get that this is kind of silly, but it's just in making things work logically, pardon the pun. To open a garage door, it needs power. But to get in and out, you need a power unit on either side, or you have to step inside a little bit and turn the power off, which in real life, with the speed the door comes down, you'll be on the CTE train faster than a kickoff returner. So, what if we could do this cleaner? Say if we needed to get in a building and quickly shut the door behind us. Here's how. You'll notice here the power on the inside power unit is on, but the door is closed. We turn the power off and the door raises, which is counterintuitive to what we know about them. But with an XOR, all I need is one power unit to be on, and the door will open. So at first this had both on, which meant the door was closed. I turned the interior off, which raised the door. Now both power units are turned off, the amber light is off, red tube is off, black tube is off, and the door is closed. Now let's go back inside. Now I get my ass inside, turn on the interior power unit, and the door comes down. I don't have to do that straddle over the threshold to get the door to close behind me. I can get behind cover quicker and get safe. And that's that. We've covered the types and how to get them going, and a couple examples on using them. At the end of this video will be some notes, so feel free to find this video and pause there if you need a refresher. I fully admit again that I'm not an expert at this, but this is what I've found in my testing and my real Commonwealth usage. I'm hoping to get the time and energy needed to finish my Coastal Cottage/Mercer Safe House video finished so you can see how exactly I use them. If there's other topics you'd like to see me cover, leave a comment, or find me on Reddit, Instagram, or Twitch. No OF yet sad face. And as always, remember one thing. I suck at Fallout 4.